The Dallas Mavericks lose their final game of the season, but finish 5th in the Western Conference.
It's time to get some sweet, sweet revenge, baby.
More on that on today's Locked On Mavs.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and coordinator for the Locked On Podcast Network. And joining me, as always, my co-host, contributor at Mavs.com. The Clippers crooner, the One More Thing King. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
It's time for some revenge, baby. Also, full disclosure, I had my second shot yesterday, and I feel like the flu has hit me for like 2 months. Crap. But you know what? You know what makes me feel better? These freaking Dallas Mavericks. The 5th seed in the playoffs. And I want to say this right off the bat. Yeah, in the West. I said this over the weekend when I did a solo pod, but I also just want to bring it up off the top with Nick. How crazy is it that the Mavericks finished 5th?
Better record than last season. Better record than last season. Better position than last season. They went through all that. They were 9-14, 14th in the Western Conference back in, what was it, February? Or January, like late January.
Yeah.
And they just came back and they ended up with a better record than last year. Who would have thought the Mavericks went on? Because everybody talked about, last year's Mavericks so much better. Dude. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? You and me right here. And all I have to say to everybody that was so down on the Mavericks and were like, oh, this team sucks and blah, blah, blah. And leave. Take it with you and leave. On today's show, Isaac and I will break down in full the Dallas Mavericks loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves. We'll break down every single play. We'll talk about all that matters. We'll talk about all the minutes the rookies played, and then maybe, just maybe, we'll get into the Mavericks matchup with the Clippers. If you know us, you know that's absolutely false. The NBA playoffs are almost here. Don't miss the big storylines and team previews you can find every day on the Locked On NBA podcast. Follow Locked On NBA on the Odyssey app or wherever you get podcasts. Myself and Adam Mares host on Fridays. So if you want to listen to Locked On NBA, check us out Fridays. Also, we'd recommend you check out the Locked On Clippers podcast. I know a lot of you guys do not like the Clippers and hate them, but those Clippers guys are pretty cool. They're not the type of fans that will, rub stuff in your face or anything. They will definitely be biased, 100%, right? Like let's not fake it here, but go check out those guys as well. All right, Isaac Harris. So I was joking up top. We will not talk too much about the Mavericks loss, 136-121 to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Those Timberwolves get up, man. Like they get up for games, and man, they have some really interesting guys. Karl-Anthony Towns doesn't know what pushing is. Like he pushed like 3 or 4 times, and he got called a foul, and he was like, "That's not a foul. How is that a foul?" Even though he pushed guys. But other than that, they have some talent on that team.
Yes, they do, and that's why you couldn't walk into this last game thinking that this was an OKC or even in Toronto, right, that type of game. They have young guys, and they're going to play those guys. But just this last night, I mean, I don't know how many listeners were trying to figure out all this, and with the
they're all in my mentions.
Of the Zach Galifianakis meme of trying to add stuff up or GIF.
Do you know who literally sent me the Zach Galifianakis meme?
Who?
Ben Rogers.
Let's go.
of Ben and Skin. Literally sent me that after I said he was rooting for the Clippers all night to win, and I was like, or he was rooting for the Thunder to win all night, and I was like, no, you don't want that. We didn't want that.
It was just wild going into the night because the NBA obviously put all of these games starting at 8 p.m. Central Time. So you had all of these games going on simultaneously. The
ones that matter to the Mavs. So it was Mavs, Timberwolves, it was Clippers, Thunder, and then it was Blazers and Nuggets all at the same time.
And Lakers and Pelicans. And
right, correct.
So it's like all 4 of these games, and we're all like watching the scores of these games, and Portland goes up early, like early second quarter, they're up by 20. And I was thinking before the game, I was texting Nick, I'm like, dude, Denver's just not going to play anybody. They're just going to take this game.
you kept telling me that all week, and I was like, hold on with this Denver team, because they don't rest guys. They're not the Clippers. They're not just going to rest guys. And so even before the game, the Clippers rested everybody except for Patrick Beverley. Rested and Zubac, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But they rested everybody. Like, everybody was resting for that team. And they were tanking the game again, especially against OKC. They really wanted to lose that game. And there's probably a reason why they wanted to lose that game.
Yeah,
but Denver didn't rest anybody. Denver played all their guys and decided to go in on it, and they just lost the same way the Mavericks lost. They just sucked tonight, and the Blazers and the Timberwolves wanted it more, I guess.
So there's two different angles you could take to the Clippers. So the Clippers, what was it? Back early last week, we looked at the last 3 games for the Clippers, and we just wrote the Clippers in for 3. And we were on this podcast saying, okay, they're just going to win their last 3. It was Charlotte, Houston, and OKC. You're like, they got this in the bag. They go against Charlotte, they win by like 20. You're like, all right, cool. You're just going to run the table. You're going to finish 3, and that's it. They go into Houston and purposely lose, and you're like, oh.
Last 2 games, Houston and OKC. Literally the 2 worst teams.
And it's like, can you out-tank OKC right now? Because they're on a historic tank job right now. Yeah. And they went in OKC, and they did it all because, and I'm saying right here, I'm not saying any other reason out there, all because they want Dallas in round 1.
So that's the theory, is that they wanted Dallas in round 1.
Because that's what I'm believing.
Because if they had won those last 2 games, they would have been the 3rd seed. They would have been the 3rd seed, and the Mavericks probably would have finished 5th.
If they just won one of the last 2 games, they would be the 3rd seed.
The other theory that I will not endorse as highly, because yes, we believe that the Clippers wanted the Mavericks, and we believe that they picked their opponent and picked the Mavericks instead. The other theory that I think most people subscribe to is that the Clippers are trying to avoid the Lakers in some way. And they did this by, if they beat their first round opponent as the 3rd seed, their second round opponent would probably be the Lakers. If they were the 4th seed, then they wouldn't have to face the Lakers until the Western Conference Finals, if it worked out the way that they thought, and the Lakers were in 7th. So
we'll take it this way. Either way, it's disrespect to Dallas, because if you're doing this to avoid the Lakers in the second round, then you think it's an easy win over Dallas. And so either way, it's a disrespect
already thinking
factor
past
to
the
Dallas.
first round in that other scenario anyway, right?
Either they did this because they want Dallas, or they did it because they want to avoid the Lakers in the second round. Thus implies that, hey, no big deal. We're beating Dallas in the first round. So either way,
the Mavericks in the first round.
Yeah. They're disrespecting the Mavericks in the first round too. So
100%.
And everything built up. Like we know everything. We're going to talk about the storylines of this series, but if there's ever been a time for a sweet, sweet revenge, now's the time.
Absolutely, now's the time. So we're going to get into all those storylines. I have just a giant list of storylines that carry over, some from last season and some just from this season, going into this series, the Mavericks against the Clippers. So bunch of Clippers and Mavericks storylines going into this. The LA teams throwing me off. Bunch of Clippers and Mavericks storylines. We'll get into that coming up. But before we do, Indeed.com is the place to hire people for your company. You're the hiring expert for your company. What you really need is to help make the short list easier for you. I recently was able to hire somebody for our social team, and we went through this whole process, and Indeed made it a little bit easier for us to be able to screen people, to be able to go in and pick a skills test. 136 skills tests that you can pick for your applicants. Wow. It's absolutely great for you. Get your quality short list of candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description faster. Only pay for the candidates that have the must-have qualifications, and schedule and complete video interviews in your Indeed dashboard. According to Talent Nest, Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined. 4 times more. It is a proven track record. Get started right now with a free $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked. A $75 credit at Indeed.com/locked. Indeed.com/locked. Offer valid through June 30th. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Isaac Harris, let's get into some of these storylines. So, Mavericks playing the Clippers. Couple of things that stand out. Obvious one, start off the bat. And let's just we'll run through them as they come up.
Yeah.
Luka Doncic game winner last year. Huge. That was a momentous moment with the Mavericks.
Reggie Jackson's crying tonight.
This is my follow-up to this. The Mavericks tied that series 2-2 at that point, and that was a huge, huge moment. Clippers started to look vulnerable and all that. The Mavericks won a game without Porzingis, and that was huge for them. And Reggie Jackson gonna have PTSD in this series, right?
Yeah.
Like because of that shot, he's a huge part of their team now. He is a much bigger part of this team than he was last year. So those two things I think are pretty big.
Over under 8.5. The amount of times they showed a Luka game winner in the series.
Oh, do we get to count the build-up, like the pregame? All the
No.
pre-games, I feel like we'll have it.
I know all the pre-games will. Well, maybe we can come up with a Locked On Mavs bingo card, board bets, or something for the first round. That'll be a good one. But no, I mean, I feel like Reggie Jackson's set back right now saying, dang it, I've went this whole time of just kind of pushing that play off. And now, or he could be set back saying, you know what, it's time for me to get revenge. Telling Ty Lue, I want Luka. And I hope that that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, Reggie Jackson. So just to let everybody know, last season he averaged 21 minutes a game with the Clippers when he was traded over, or when he was added. Wasn't he a buyout candidate last season? Anyway,
yeah.
Since he actually started to start this season, the beginning of March, he's averaging 27 minutes a game and has had 28 of the 33 games. So he's a much bigger part of their team. He's starting. He's there. He's there for Luka to hit another shot over, right? Like this is another thing we can focus on. But yeah, the Luka game winner, huge one. Obviously, another Luka versus moment. Luka versus Marcus Morris. It was talked about post game after the Wolves game. Luka was asked about it. He said that Marcus Morris actually apologized to him after the whole stepping on the heel incident and all that kind of stuff. It was Marcus Morris that was jawing at Luka that got Porzingis to get ejected. All that egged him on in that way. So there's a lot of like back and forth stuff. Also,
yeah. Well,
add DeMarcus Cousins in there as a multiplier, right? Like,
I'm not worried about Cousins.
But he can come in and muck stuff up in the same way that like Dwight Howard did for the Lakers last year. He can come in and make people mad and get people riled up. True.
Yeah. In a weird way, I think Dwight's more effective than Boogie right now. But
well, in several ways, but
yes. Yeah, the trash talking, that was a thing post game tonight after this Timberwolves game.
Mm-hmm.
When Luka talked to the media, he brought that up kind of willingly. He said, talking about how fun last year was. That's one of the most enjoyable things about Luka is just how fun he has on a basketball court. Everybody talks about it. His teammates talks about it. And, in this world and game of everything just being serious, Luka's still just like, hey, I mean, it's fun. I had a lot of fun last year, and this is what playing the game of basketball is for, is to have fun. But he mentioned, he said, there was a lot of trash talking last year and blah, blah, blah. And then Tim McMahon asked to follow up about it. I was like, all right, yeah, about that trash talk. Marcus. So it's going to be a thing, obviously. And when you have so many people on the Clippers that this is what they're known for, is trash talking. Pat Beverly, Marcus Morris, like they're all Rondo. I mean, all of these guys have a reputation of talking that smack, and Luka's gonna go right back at it. And that's gonna be, I'm anxious to see who's going to be the KP of this series, because like who's going to be as far as like taking up or getting in people's faces, because that's the thing we forget.
The enforcer. Did we talk all
Where's
summer
Shane Johnson?
about an enforcer that we traded him for? Is it Nico Melli? Is it JJ Redick?
Oh, it's basically Melli at this point. But no, it's like, last year we forget about that moment that you said if KP went and took up for Luka and he got ejected for it. And that was like a crazy, moment of, and who's going to match that? Not saying that we have to match all the talking trash and all that stuff, but who's going to match that intensity for Dallas? Is it Dorian? I think Tim's going to be right there. That's the part I'm going to be looking for, when the series starts. Is it just going to be Luka chirping back, or is it going to be a team type thing? And it's going to be a high energy series. If you had to put money down on the most like energetic
energy is a way to put it.
Yes. Talking trash, just everything on the table type series. This series is the one.
Speaking of, you mentioned the name Rajon Rondo. Getting up, talking. It's Rondo versus Mavs, but it's Rondo versus Carlisle too, because as much as Rondo plays on the court, and he doesn't play all that much for this Clippers team so far. Let's see, he plays about 20 minutes a game in the 18 games that he's played. So I guess that's a decent amount for what you'd consider Rondo at this point in his career. But he stands up when he's not playing and stands next to Ty Lue and shouts just like he's a coach. on the sidelines.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a lot of stuff, and so I think that matchup, the Carlisle Rondo, is there going to be anything? Is there going to be side glances? Is there going to be?
There's going to be some words exchanged. I think so.
I'm ready for it. I'm here for it. So the chippiness on the court, the chippiness on the sidelines, there's going to be all kinds of stuff. Do Carlisle and Rondo get in a fist fight? Should we put that on our bingo board?
A fist fight.
Does Carlisle punch him square in the back? Take the playoff share there. Boom. And then
here's your Connect 4.
And just Mavrello in the background. just laughing his head off. Does Carlisle come up and punch Rondo and just say,
you're out of control with your soundboard?
That's a big storyline, I think. And none of the Mavs are still there, obviously, from when Rondo was there, but Carlisle's still there. And I think that one's the one that matters.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we all know the history with Rondo in Dallas. And if there's, when you look at just the fan base's relationship with the Clippers, we have the Rondo thing, we have the Marcus Morris thing of hurting Luka and all that stuff. I would go out on a limb and say the amount of people who are in love with Pat Beverly that's not a big group. Paul George.
When the Mavs were about to sign him.
That's true. That's very true. Paul George has his fair share of haters in the world, but Mavs, it's so intriguing how the fan base will rally around this series compared to like a Denver series, to where there wouldn't be as much hate going against Denver. And y'all know, if you've been listening to this podcast, we've been saying we wanted Denver. I wanted Denver hands down over the Clippers. That was no doubt. Now that page is turned. We have to turn that page. That's not an option right now. Now we have to focus on the Clippers, and it's about getting revenge and how can we match up with them. It's two kind of completely different teams as far as we're fully healthy and we have a few more pieces. Clippers definitely have, some more pieces and stuff too. So, and we get to build on this rivalry, right?
Mavs are fully, we'll talk about this a lot. Mavs is fully healthy, I guess. Porzingis has played a couple games. Maxey has still been in and out of the lineup and hasn't looked right. There's a couple of things here and there, but
they should all at least be playing.
Yeah, right. They're as close as they're gonna get.
Except for Reddick.
Yeah. All right. Let's another one. Speaking of Kristaps Porzingis, man, this is a big series. We talked about last week what a big playoff series could mean for Porzingis' career. Not just even his time with the Mavs, but a lot with his time. It could mean a lot for his time with the Mavs, but for his career as a basketball player. What could it mean? And he was pretty good last year, right? He was a guy that the Mavericks could rely on a little bit in some of those games, and he was big. His spacing matters a lot. I think it's going to matter a lot against this Clippers team, and I think it's going to be pretty big for him to come in and have a big series.
Yeah, man. KP takes this team to a whole different level, to where if KP's at the level that we think he can play at, then let's go. The opportunities, the path that Dallas could go down, it's kind of unlimited, but we just don't know. There's a world in which KP plays this entire series and he averages 28 a game, and him and Luka are firing on all cylinders, and they win it in 6 games. There's also a world that KP plays 1 game and then he's out game 2 for knee soreness or something. That's the wild differences of where this could go for KP. But yeah, it's like you said, it's man, what happens with him in these playoffs will show so much, not just for Dallas, but also if Dallas is looking at it going forward in the future of hey man, there's a couple of years left on the contract. If they ever do reach a point to where they say, okay, we don't know about the Luka KP fit, this playoff series is what every team in the league is watching too. So it's kind of twofold for Dallas's success, but also if you ever do entertain moving him in the future, you need a big showing in the playoffs at the same time. So I'm intrigued with him I'm not really worried about him offensively if he's on the court, just assuming fully healthy. It's all eyes for me is defensively. And how they use him in these lineups. They've been going with bigs. Carlisle before that Pelicans game the other day was saying, hey, we studied this all year. We like having 2 bigs on the court, we think now. Well, now you're going to play the Clippers to where it's Zubac and Marcus Morris. So who's KP going to guard? Who's Dwight Powell going to guard? Are you going to stick to that mindset? And if so, man, KP's got to be able to play defense, or are they going to put KP back at the 5 and all? Like that stuff's intriguing.
Clippers have started Zubac and Ibaka before.
Okay. Yeah.
It's on the table. I don't know if they'll do it, but it's on the table.
I think if I'm the Clippers, I dare them to go big, and I keep my, Zubac and Marcus Morris front line. I mean, it looks like Marcus Morris will probably get the Luka assignment.
But Zoo kills the Mavs, right? Like, you have to remember that.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, who's is KP? I guess KP can guard Marcus Morris. But one of the biggest things KP has struggled with this season is, going out and defending the 3-point line. And they're going to put Marcus Morris in the corner or whoever else, in the corner. And KP loves trying to hover around. He's best defensively when he's trying to protect the rim. So yeah, that's stuff that Rick Carlisle will have to figure out this week.
Oh, absolutely. All right, coming up, let's talk a little bit more about Kristaps Porzingis because I think he matters. I think I actually misspoke. I don't think they've started Ibaka and Zubac. They have played them together, though, to my knowledge.
Okay.
Anyway, all right. Coming up, we're going to get a little bit more of Porzingis, talk about why he matters, because last season, it wasn't just that he was injured and missed the last 3 games. There's a little bit more to that I want to get into. And then a couple more storylines about the Clippers, the Mavericks, all this. We're going into it, man. This whole week is going to be absolutely all about the series. We'll talk about it coming up. But before we do, let's talk about betonline.ag, the place to put down some money on sports. You know that this series is going to be up there very, very soon. You can go check it out. And Isaac has now checked out. He's gone. He's left the building. He's left the podcast. But yeah, go check out some. They have a couple of awards bets right now. If you want to go check out awards bets for the playoffs. Dang it, I did the wrong screen on YouTube. All right, go check out some awards bets for the 6th man of the year. Jordan Clarkson is a 900 favorite, minus 900. Jalen Brunson's plus 3,300. So that one is, they think that one's in the bag. Defensive player of the year, Gobert is a minus 3,000 favorite. They think that one's in the bag. Jokic, minus 10,000 for MVP. Oh my gosh. They think that one's in the bag too. Rookie of the year. Let's see if this one's even close.
This one should be closer.
Minus 700 for LaMelo Ball, plus 400 for Anthony Edwards. That one's a little bit interesting. Maybe put some money down on that. When you do, use the promo code LOCKEDON. Get a 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Bet online, your online sportsbook experts. Also want to tell you about Built Bar. BuiltBar.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. They're a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. They're absolutely delicious. And like they say on the package, you can look at it right now if you're on YouTube. Zero guilt. They're guilt-free bars. You can have them and you can eat them, and they can tide you over for a meal. They can give you a snack. Anything that you want, with any way you want to use Built bars. They're great for you. 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, 4 grams of sugar. That's the raspberry bar, just as an example. They're delicious. They're good. Everybody reorders them on the Locked On Podcast Network. Again, use that promo code LOCKED15 to get a 15% off your next order, not your first, your next, with BuiltBar.com. All right, Isaac Harris, let's get into some more matchups for these two teams. Porzingis, you have to also remember he was ejected in game 1 of this series. And it wasn't just that he was injured and missed the last 3 games. He missed a lot of the first game of this series too. And it would have mattered. I think he would have mattered down the stretch there. He played just under 20 minutes in that first game. He played 38 minutes in game 3, if you want to compare some to that. And in that game 3, he had 34 points in that game, 13 boards. And also remember, I forgot about this, but if you remember in that game 3, Luka got hurt and missed the fourth quarter, basically.
Yeah, his ankle.
He subbed out with 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter of that game 3. And Porzingis came on and he scored 12 points in the fourth quarter after Luka went out. Like, he was able to carry the Mavs a little bit down that stretch. And so keeping those two guys together, man, and keeping them both on the court, I think I may have laid this out last season after the series, but the amount of time that both of those guys were on the floor together was so minuscule in this series, because Porzingis missed, a lot of game 1, and then Luka missed some of game 3, and then Porzingis missed 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
Like, they just didn't see a lot of those two guys together. And so we'll have to dig through some of the numbers this week, but Porzingis being there, I think matters a lot. And his coming back, I don't think we should undersell it.
Yeah, and even look at their matchup this season. They play 3 times this season, in which they played 3 times this season. The first time they played each other, it was the 50-point win for the Mavericks, but KP didn't play.
No Kawhi, no Porzingis.
KP didn't play in that. So you look at the past how many ever matchups between Dallas and the Clippers, when Luka and KP play together, it hasn't happened a ton. At least fully healthy too. They played that back-to-back. So they beat the Clippers by 50. And then more recently, they played that back-to-back against the Clippers, in which, they lost the first one, won the second one. That second one was when Luka had 42 in that game. KP had a smaller game. He had 34 minutes, but he had 11 points, 13 boards. So it's kind of a more quiet game for him. But you go back to that game before that, Luka had a triple-double. KP had over 20 points, but they lost in that. So there's only only 2 games this season that they can look at and say, and they went, the Clippers went smaller in that game too, Zubac and Marcus Morris in the starting lineup. So this week you'll see everyone who covers the Mavericks analyzing those 2 games. I think majority of people will throw out the 50-point win, but I think everybody in the world will be analyzing that back-to-back series between the Clippers and Dallas earlier this season and just dissecting what happened and the matchups and everything, because that's all we have to go by right now.
Couple more storylines I want to get to in this. I already mentioned this, but Zubac kills the Mavs.
Yeah,
he does. He's beaten them a lot, and so maybe some of this Willie and Porzingis lineups, these different lineups the Mavericks have tried, maybe that's something that can get them going and get them, stop Zubac. But it's really tough to play a team like the Clippers if they're getting easy buckets from a guy like Zoo. And so that's a storyline to definitely watch, because during the regular season, and I don't remember last season during the playoffs if he was that big in this series, but it was just a huge, it's a huge advantage for the Clippers.
Can I give you a storyline?
Oh yeah.
The revenge series for Yogi Ferrell.
If Yogi could have gone on a run, this wouldn't have been a thing. If Yogi was playing in that OKC game, last night on a Sunday night, if he could have gone on a run like he did, we've seen him before, then they could have avoided all
Just
this.
wait. There's going to be a moment in one of the games this series. One of the teams are going to be up by like 20, and the bench units are going to be in, and it's Yogi's going to like cross up Trey Burke and score, and we're all going to like freak out and be like, oh my gosh, Yogi Ferrell.
Should have kept him.
Should have kept Yogi. But the Clippers, they went out and added some vets. Something like I want Dallas to reach this point in the future of adding some vets, like we've talked about. They've added Rondo, they added Nick Batum. It's these type of guys that have the experience, that's been in the league for a while, that now they're like rounding out their rotation with those type of dudes compared to, Amir Coffey, who's on the end of the bench. But, I thought Batum was like done, and he hasn't been like
a lot of people did
bad for them. So,
he's been good.
Yeah, and he guarded Luka a little bit earlier in the year. I hope they let him guard Luka again, but please, I welcome that.
Yeah, that we'll talk all about the additions and the players. And I tweeted out a list of like, these are the big additions for each team and how they're different. We're going back to just Mavs Clippers back to back. Let's bring it up again. The Clippers tanked for the Mavs, they like that's a thing that has to be brought up again this season. Another thing between the two teams is last year the Mavericks didn't have Brunson or Dwight Powell.
Yep.
That's a big duo. So that duo coming off the bench is going to be big. And then on the Clippers side, the Clippers had Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell last year.
Yeah.
Now, if you're watching on YouTube, you can tell I'm shrugging right now. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for the Mavs? I don't know, man. They were able to attack Lou and Montrezl a lot, especially with Boban, if you remember. And Lou Will definitely the Mavericks targeted and switches and all that. So is that a good thing or a bad thing for the Mavs? It's good that they're going to get Brunson and Dwight Powell back, but that Lou Will and Montrezl are gone.
In a way, the Clippers replaced those two guys with Luke Kennard and Ibaka. Ibaka was the other vet that I was going to mention a while ago. Ibaka, Rondo, right. Nick Batum, these three guys that have the experience. But so swapping out Lou and Harrell for Kennard and Ibaka, I think that
And Rondo. Too.
Yeah, and Rondo at the same time. But it's like what you said is a good point for Dallas's angle of if you're a Dallas fan, listen to this, man, we got beat last year. Do we have a shot? Clippers are so good. That's the selling points right there. I'm like, okay, we did all the what ifs of KP getting ejected and missing the games in last series for the knee, Luka hurting his ankle and all that stuff, and they still took him to 6 games. If you can assume a healthy slate for the Mavericks this series, and you're adding Jalen Brunson and you're adding Dwight Powell to this, to this team, that's that's huge. And you're adding Willie Cauley-Stein. He didn't play in the bubble either, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, he didn't play.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are 3 guys that are part of the rotation that, I mean, you're going to have these guys in this series. So Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, shout out to his defense.
This is another point I wanted to bring up with Dwight Powell. We mentioned Dwight Powell after the series last year. He would have helped the Mavericks. I wouldn't want him to have played 30 something minutes, right? Or, maybe even 25 minutes. He would have helped as being a vertical threat, a different look the Mavericks could have given that they did not have last year at all. These are the guys that played last year for the Mavericks. They're still on the team. Luka, Hardaway, Burke, Porzingis, Dorian, Boban, Maxey, and that's it. Those are the only guys that played last year. That's 7 guys that played last year. So there's no Dwight on that list. There's no Willie Cauley-Stein. Those are 2 guys I think that can give a little bit of an advantage in the sense that they give you a vertical threat
Brunson.
that the Mavericks didn't have. And I just want to talk about the centers. They didn't have those 2 guys that can give you that different kind of look. Now, the other thing is Brunson. Brunson didn't play last year. Richardson didn't play last year. Whatever you want to.
But both of those replacing Seth, I think, is an upgrade.
I think Brunson's going to replace Bubble Burke. I don't know if we're getting Bubble Burke back, right? Like Burke was actually pretty good. Burke was pretty good in Bubble Burke averaged 12 points in this series and shot 47% from 3. I think Brunson is replacing his production.
Yeah.
And but to your point, I think Richardson's going to have to replace Curry's production. So he also shot 47% from 3. So the Mavericks, if they hit their threes, they can win this series. If they don't, it's over. Right? Like it's just the way that this team has been.
Well, you mentioned threes, and I think if you had to, we're going to do more deep dive on the series and stuff as the week goes along. But if there's one stat that's stood out to me tonight, as soon as it became official, the Clippers are like a historic 3-point shooting team this year. They're number 1 in the league in 3-point percentage at 41% from 3 as a team. Dallas is 19th in the league in 3-point attempts given by an opponent per game. So Dallas is giving them up, and they're going to they've been letting other teams shoot the 3. And for the Clippers, they've been hitting them at a very, very high clip, the best in the league. So that equation worries me a little bit, especially when your center has been struggling trying to get out on the perimeter. But that's what they're going to be game planning for all week. And I am so excited for this series. There was a detachment in a way going against Denver of okay, I don't dislike Jokic. I like some of those guys in Denver. Let's do this. I think we can, for sure beat them. We got this.
It would have been don't make me hate Jokic, please. Don't make me hate.
Now we're going to this series. I'm I hate them. I hate the Clippers. I'm going to be pissed off if we lose again. And I'm all in. Let's do this. Let's get revenge. Let's put the Clippers out. Let's ruin all of their plans. They gave up all those picks in SGA and everything to get these 2 guys. And for
2 years.
Let's beat them and show Kawhi of we got space, bro. We just beat you and we just put you out. You've done nothing in LA. Come join us. We got this. I'm ready.
I had 3 storylines left. That was one of them. Kawhi is going to be a free agent and the Mavericks have space. That's something. And then last season, there was no fans and they were in the bubble. I mean, it's so different.
Hardest championship ever for the Lakers.
And I think that Luka is going to thrive off of fans a little bit more.
Yes.
So and the Mavericks will get some kind of home court advantage when they play in the AAC. So
we get a Luka playoff game coming up next week. This is gonna be a blast, man.
It's been 3 years.
I have been so excited to have the playoffs in the AAC again, and that place. I think we're up to 9,000 people that'll be allowed in the arena, and that place should be rocking.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
Before we go, I wanted to give a final shout out. We should do this every year. A memorial shout out last game of the season to Alec Peters, who literally played less than 40 games in the entire, his entire season. Actually, let's just bring up his stats because people won't believe this. Alec Peters was on the Phoenix Suns for just the 2017-18 season. My guy played 20 games just that season and didn't play at all. He scored in the last game of the season. He scored 36 points against the Dallas Mavericks, and the Mavericks lost that game. Now, the Mavericks were terrible, and the Suns were both terrible, and so Mavericks needed to lose that game to increase their odds, and when they increased their odds in the lottery, they got the pick that got them 5th that they were able to trade up from to get Luka. So Alec Peters, Memorial, last game of the season. Shouts to you, Alec Peters. Because of Alec Peters, in that random 36-point game, the most points he scored in a game other than that was 8 points. And he scored 36 against the Dallas Mavericks in that game. In 28 minutes, he hit 8 threes in that game. It was absolutely wild. Want to give it up. Give it up for Alec Peters.
Thank you, Alec. And I want to end the pod on one last stat.
Wait. You got to say it.
I got one more thing.
Yeah.
The Dallas Mavericks have made the playoffs every year that Mavrelo Balovic has been around. And
I'm Mavrelo Balovic, owner of Mavs. Mavrelo has
actually, let's rephrase it. Ever since Mavrelo Balovic has made his presence known,
resurgence.
The Mavericks have made the playoffs, and let's go. Mavrelo's going to be.
What are you? Who are you?
He's going to be off the chains if they win the title.
Is he on the chains now? I don't think he's ever been on the chains. Mavrelo has always been off the chains. Completely. All right, there you go. That's a little bit of a Clippers preview. We'll be doing it all week, guys. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Oh.
Boom.